How's it going, everyone? Mahaji here, back at it with another video, and today we're going to be taking a very good look at my main character in Street Fighter 6, Blanka. Now, before we get into it, make sure you guys hit the like button, subscribe, and share with your friends because I've got some exciting news, and it's that in front of you, I am currently #1 in North America for Blanka's as far as the rank goes. So I thought that was pretty cool. I had legend status for like 5 seconds before every good player took it. So yeah, I just wanted to share with you guys that for a little second. Just kind of, put some respect on my name for a little bit, you know what I'm saying? But today is about Blanka, so we're just going to be talking about him, how strong he is in the meta, and kind of, going through the ins and outs of why I feel that he is, very strong and in some cases a little bit weaker than other characters. So let's go ahead and let's pick a good character. Kim. Alright, so first I think it's best to kind of identify what's strong in the meta currently. I want to say it's about 4 or 5 things. Does your character have an invincible reversal? Blanka does. Do they have really good drive rushes? Blanka does. He is actually, some of his moves actually become enhanced depending on which move he does. So his drive rush is actually pretty good and flexible. Also, do they have a strong level 1, level 2, level 3? Blanka does have a good level 1, level 2. His level 3 is kind of whatever, but typically because you'll never really see it, he always tries to go on level 2. But he does have a really good level 2. The next thing is corner carry. Typically wouldn't say that he has crazy corner carry. His combo is like this. While they do look like they have a lot of corner carry, his situations afterwards aren't going to lead you into like a really, if he gets throw here, for example, he does get this, right? He's in your face, consistent throw Oki, that type of thing. But again, it's something that you're not always going to have with the character. The fact that he's able to rush down so consistently is more of the player being able to condition that than him just outright having it. The next thing is their throw loop. Do they have a throw loop? And Blanka has a throw loop. His throw loop is actually pretty good, given that his throw loop allows for many things. So for example, if I drive rush light here, I'm actually still plus, which means I actually can go for a strike throw again to kind of bait out parries or reversals, things of that nature. And you can also just straight up do something like this on block. Right, that's +5. Typically, that's only +2. So he has a lot more active frames to work with back medium kick for Oki compared to a lot of other characters who can't even get a throw loop, or they just have to kind of like dash and hope that they can get the throw loop without being interrupted. With that being said, I do want to talk about some of the weaknesses of the character, even though he does kind of have, a very flexible kit overall. I think the one thing that his toolkit kind of struggles with is something that even Marissa can kind of struggle with too. It's the fact that he doesn't have a really good medium button, and when I say that, I know people are going to be like, oh my god, but he has this button, he has this button, he has all of these buttons, they're all very good, but in the span of, or excuse me, in the context of the characters that I'm talking about, his medium buttons are actually they're slower. That's what I'll say. So for example, this button right here, right, this is a 9-frame button. However, it is not 9 frames consistently. So what I mean is, if we take Kenneth Masters over here and he throws out this button, you're never going to see this button hit at like frame like 7 or like frame 8. You're always going to see this hit at frame 6, and it's because the way that the move is animated, there's not a recoil for the move to kind of like swing, right? So he's just throwing this bitch out, right? Blanka's crouching medium punch, on the other hand, if I space it correctly, you see how on the bottom there, the red is the active frames? That actually hit on frame, I want to say 9, 10, 11, frame 11, right? So his mid-range is a little bit slower when it comes to his best normal to throw out in neutral, because typically you will not be able to hit this on frame 9. Even just then, that was frame 10. So you can see, even on the frame data, right? This is -3. If I can space it properly, it'll be like -2, -1. But again, that's just one thing about the character is like, it's a big button, sure, but it does struggle against a lot of characters who have faster normals in this range right here. So despite him having a good set of normals to work with, it is a little bit more risky for this character to play. And that's kind of leading into my next point, but I do want to talk about his other M buttons real quick. So this is a good button, 8 frame startup. Like I said, this is all of his medium buttons are kind of slow in this regard. Forward medium kick, standing medium kick, crouching medium kick. Even if they do have a little bit of distance like this button does, right? It's still slower, so you're typically never going to get that that counter hit that you're looking for in neutral if you're trying to aim for it with like every other character, for example. The next point I want to talk about, and I'm going to kind of bounce around here a little bit, is the fact that Blanka is typically a risky character because since he has a little bit of lackluster mid-range, even though his buttons have good distance, I would say that he does require a little bit of risk involved in every single decision he makes specifically, and there's a couple of reasons for that. So the first one is that from his lights, he cannot jail anything. As you can see on the frame meter on the bottom, he can't do any normal into itself and it jail, right? So every time he does something, he has to go into this to kind of frame trap, and that can be perfect parried. Okay, well, if that's the case, I'll just do this. And he's a little bit more negative, right? If we take, for example, Mr. Kenneth here, he's only -1 off of this button, right? He's only -1 off of this button. Blanka is -2, -2, -3, -3. You see, like, he's a little bit overall just kind of like more unsafe than everybody on his buttons. And another thing is that when he gets these smaller hits, for example, let's say on this counter hit, right? Let's say he gets this, and you see how Ken is +6 here, right? So he actually gets a combo here. He gets a combo here, right? So typically when a character gets a counter hit light into counter hit or into another normal, it's normally a 6 frame mid, right? But Blanka doesn't have that luxury, even though he does have a quote-unquote 7 frame button to work with. If he gets this, typically he has to go right into like electric to confirm, right? So when you're in a scramble situation, to kind of tie this all together, let's say the second hit hits, right? Or like, let's say you get like a counter hit here and like you hit them out of it. Typically what you'll see from me is I'll just go for this, because that's the best confirm that I can get from a good space, right? And since that is the case, he's typically taking a risk every time he throws out a normal, because he doesn't have a safe way to kind of end his block strings, right? He does have access to this, which is -3 on block, really good. He can also play RPS with this OD Electric to stay +4, so it's not like he's out of options here. But a lot of good players, especially players I played recently, they will try to perfect parry the Electric because they know that it does not jail. The only way that he can kind of circumvent this problem and stay away from like getting DP'd easily, or running into this where he does light kick into Electric and gets DI'd for it, is I've been just trying to like peeling off. I've just kind of been like seeing what's good. Sometimes you'll just see this and try to get the space and do medium punch. These little things do add up. However, it does go to the point of, like, for example, a character like Ken, for every risk that I'm taking, if a character like Ken gets the corner carry off of a basic combo because I was wrong, it puts Blanka in a very disadvantageous scenario. And with that being said, I want to go into his next problem that I feel is a little bit understated. And like I said earlier, he cannot go into like light kick into medium kick off of like counter hit, right? And it's the fact that his damage is actually a little bit lower than people seem to think. Obviously, if you do like, if you whiff a DP in this nigga's face, obviously he's gonna like do a lot of damage and have like really good resource to go off of. But his real like win condition is not even doing that much damage to you. For example, like let's say a combo like this. Okay, for example, if I were to set him to do the HP here, right? Okay, if I don't hit, right? This is typically what you'll see from me. Right? Boom. That was only 2,000 damage from a DP punish. When typically a lot of players, or a lot of characters will go for their punish It's typically a lot more, around like 3, like 4. It just depends on what character it is. Like Bison's gonna really hurt you for DPing, right? But Blanka's having to give up damage for his win condition, and of course there are ways to circumvent it. If you want to spend a little bit more resources, of course it's available to you. But again, you're having to spend resources for that, right? Like I did 900 more damage there, and I spent two of my drive gauge bars, right? However, if that's the case, then my next interaction I will be out of 2 drive gauge bars, which means I probably won't have enough resources to go into early electric, and which also means if I get perfect parried and thrown back into the corner, I'm gonna have less drive gauge to work with and also to DP out with, right? So these things kind of add up to make him a little bit more risky than the rest of the cast, because he's having to sacrifice damage on the table for more opportunities to get the hit, right? And of course, his set play is some of the best in the game, don't get me wrong. I think that's actually one of the defining traits that a lot of players don't seem to understand, is that if you watch a lot of like Japanese or like European Blankas, typically they will just try to go for regular strike throw stuff, right? If you ever see someone get this, which is his OD command grab, typically you'll just see someone walk up and just kind of look at you and throw. And he has so much mix-up opportunity off of this. It's kind of ridiculous. But that's not really the point of the video. I'm just trying to share with you guys how I feel about the character overall, and where he fits in the meta. I will say some of the strengths that play into this character overall do involve the fact that he has a really good stand heavy kick. His reward off of anti-airs in general is pretty high, and just to give you guys an example. So whenever he gets, or whenever a character lands an anti-air in this game, typically it's like a DP or it's a button designated for that purpose. But if you have a character who can cancel into their normal like this, right, it actually gives them Oki, right? So here is a simple just strike throw mix up off of me just being able to, you know, just doing like this, right? And just being able to strike throw them here. It's also really good for checking when people want to get out of the corner, because oftentimes if you're burnt out, you want to get out of the corner, you try to jump over him, it just does this, and then he just hops back in and then hits you with a DI off of something. So it's really hard to get past Blanka. And on top of that, let's say I do a non-kin normal like this, right? Let's say this normal, this right here, right? If I get that, or if I even just get a counter hit, let me see if I can do it. Right, so if I hit like this, right, that reward is really high for Blanka. It's probably some of the highest that you will see in the game off of an anti-air. So on top of having a DP that does go vertical and more horizontal, he also has those 2 anti-airs, which makes it really hard to deal with him or jump against him. So I do think his place in the meta is very interesting, because if we take a look at the cast, I think it's very clear he's not really playing the same game as everyone. Typically you'll see a lot of players try to denounce Blanka players as like quote-unquote playing the game, but inherently the risk is a lot heavier than any of the characters that you see here. Even for like Akuma, who has lower health, or for like Dalsum, who cannot really like maneuver as well as everybody else, just because he kind of gets stuffed by a lot of the greater characters in the game. Blanka is, I would say Blanka is playing his own game, and on top of that, a lot of the decision making that goes into playing Blanka is different than what you would do with a typical character. And for that reason, I think that he has a very good place in the meta, because if you play against a good player, well, I should say, if I play against a good player right now with Blanka, I'll probably get smoked, right? Because I don't have the I don't have the conditioning to play against a lot of these great players, right? However, I think with that conditioning and with, you know, the play styles, like for example, if you want to watch a good Blanka player, Wolfgang's really good, Minna's really good. Those two kind of embody the chaotic nature of the character without being too risky, right? But like I said, there's still so many risks when you're playing against certain characters. Like for Ken, for example, this matchup really sucks because Ken gets his run condition of corner carry every single time off of any mistake that Blanka makes, and Blanka has to make some calculated risk to get a hit, or to get a to get any hit on a character. Obviously, he does have slide, which is a risk in and of itself, but it has its uses as an anti-fireball tool. He also has, you know, all of these Blanka balls to work with, which are all risks. Don't get it twisted. These are all risks, because if any of these are perfect parried, then he's not in a good position, especially if this one gets perfect parried. If I can actually get it. Hello? This one, yeah. Because you're spending already 2 bars, and you're bringing yourself as close as you can to the opponent for them to get a free punish on you, basically. So, like I said, his place in the meta is very peculiar. If you watch the tier list video, which I posted about 3 or 4 days ago of this recording, you'll see that I actually have him placed in A tier for that very reason. I think that he's so flexible. It's kind of hard to lose any matchup per se, but it does get tougher and tougher as you play against better players, especially with players like Ken. But of course, Blanka has so many things to kind of blow up player behaviors, which I think is really important in this game. The more that you have at your disposal, you know, sometimes you'll often see like, oh, if you can just do one option to cover 2 options, it's usually just good to do that one. But in Blanka's case, he has so much to work with that sometimes the necessarily not the smartest move to go for is the most emotionally based that could land you the victory, right? Again, like I said, his best traits come from just having really great knockdown, on top of his set play being some of the best in the game. I mean, in the corner, if I were to show you guys how many setups I had off of like a DI stun combo, or off of, you know, if I just put you in block stun, it gets really nutty really quick. And knowing all of them is not going to help. I mean, it's really just a mix-up, right? You have to guess on your knockdown what I'm going to do, right? Of course, he also has level 2, which I think helps stabilize the character a lot. If without level 2, I think the character would struggle. I think it would be very weak, simply because the reward for doing everything he does is not going to be that crazy. But having level 2 as a stabilizer, it really helps, because it gives him a goal to shoot for outside of his Blanka chance set play. So with that in mind, I kind of do want to touch more on the character, but I'm probably going to save that for a later video. For now, this is just kind of my general opinion of how Blanka is in the meta currently. Just to reiterate, I think he's very flexible. He's flexible enough to not be weak. Like, you can't look at all of these tools and be like, oh, this button goes super far, but it's -14, so it's weak. No, this low crushes, and it's a really good button. Obviously, this taking a drive gauge bar off of any interaction that they don't parry is really good, right? Right, so all of these things kind of add up, and I will get into the character more, like I said, later. But for now, those are my thoughts on the character and how I feel he is strong in the meta. And yeah, so hopefully guys thank you guys for watching. See, I'm going off script here. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed my thoughts. Let me know how you feel about Blanka in the comments. I know a lot of you are gonna be like, man, I just fucking hate this character, bro. What the fuck? But in all due time, I will explain more about this character and why I do think he's one of the better characters in this game. Kind of slept on, but until then,